Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to uncover the really gritty, historical reality behind the world's most famous children's author. We all know the whimsical rhymes, the super colorful characters, but the true story of Theodor Seuss Geisel, well, it is far more complex and honestly, way more surprising than you might think. I mean, did you know the beloved creator of The Cat in the Hat was actually a World War II propagandist and a corporate ad man? It's a pretty wild contrast, right? On one hand, you have the completely innocent author of Green Eggs and Ham, but then you look at the historical record, and it reveals a man who spent years as a hard-hitting political cartoonist and a highly successful corporate illustrator. So here is our core thesis for today's Explainer. We're tracing what I like to call his secret identity arc. We're going to explore exactly how the massive pressures of global war and the heavy demands of corporate America fundamentally shaped his iconic social themes and, ultimately, completely revolutionized early childhood reading. Let's move along and see how this all builds, starting right at the very beginning. Section 1. The Birth of Dr. Seuss. Subtitle, Dartmouth and a Pint of Gin. So this story actually starts in the 1920s. In April of 1925, 10 buddies were caught sharing a single pint of gin in Geisel's college dorm room. Now you gotta remember, this was the Prohibition era. Alcohol was strictly illegal, and the dean of the college insisted on a pretty harsh punishment. And that punishment ended up sparking a massive legacy. Geisel was totally stripped of his position as editor-in-chief of the college's humor magazine. He was devastated, sure, but definitely undeterred. He needed a way to keep publishing his cartoons without the administration finding out, right? So he sneakily adopted a few aliases, including T. Seuss and simply Seuss, which was actually his mother's maiden name. That corny little college subterfuge is literally what birthed the famous moniker. Section 2. Quick. Henry. The Flit. Subtitle, The Corporate Ad Man. Okay, let's dive into this. Jumping ahead to the Great Depression, Geisel comes back to the States after a short stint at Oxford and becomes a hugely successful commercial illustrator. Back in early 1928, the wife of an advertising executive happened to see one of Geisel's cartoons and told her husband, "You have to hire this guy." This kicked off a massive 17-year viral ad campaign for Standard Oil's bug spray called Flit. That recurring plea, "Quick, Henry the Flit," became a total cultural phenomenon. It was even used as a punchline by the top comedians of the day. And listen, this wasn't just some one-off gig. He was quickly working with absolute corporate giants like Standard Oil, Ford Motor Company, and NBC. He's drawing these bizarre, smiling creatures to sell, motor oil and boat fuel. But here's why this matters for us. Geisel later acknowledged that this grueling advertising era taught him conciseness. It taught him exactly how to marry wacky, memorable rhymes with striking pictures. And that's a skill that would absolutely become his trademark. Section 3. Seuss Goes to War. Subtitle, Cartoons and Captain Geisel. Then, the world changes dramatically. With the onset of World War II and that harrowing news that Paris had fallen to the Nazis, Geisel's focus shifted entirely away from drawing whimsical elephants and corporate bugs. Let's walk through this rapid timeline of escalation. In 1941, he starts drawing fierce political cartoons for a New York daily newspaper. By 1942, he's illustrating posters urging Americans to buy war bonds. And then, by 1943, he fully enlists in the U.S. Army, serving as a captain and commander of the animation department in the first motion picture unit out in Hollywood. During his time at PM Magazine, he drew over 400 editorial cartoons. As our sources document, Geisel really used his pen as a weapon. He vehemently denounced Hitler and Mussolini. He mocked non-interventionists. He actually drew Charles Lindbergh as an ostrich with its head in the sand. He drew cartoons deploring anti-black racism and anti-Semitism, making the argument that they actively harmed the war effort. Concurrently, the historical record also shows he created cartoons depicting xenophobic, racist caricatures of Japanese Americans waiting for a signal from home with blocks of TNT. Once he was actually in the military, Captain Geisel worked alongside animation legends like Chuck Jones and Friz Freleng to create training films specifically for a military audience. The star of these was Private Snafu. And because these were classified adult Army training films, Geisel could write scripts featuring mild profanity and double entendres. It was a brilliant way to entertain the troops while effectively showing them the disastrous pitfalls of, say, disobeying orders or leaking information. And this brilliantly illustrates the gravity of his later military work. In 1945, Geisel wrote a live-action propaganda documentary called Your Job in Journey. It was designed to brief American soldiers on their mission after the Nazi surrender. This heavy, really ominous quote directly from the film shows a starkly different Dr. Seuss, one deeply entrenched in the grim realities of post-war Europe. Section 4. Revolutionizing Early Childhood Reading. Subtitle, The Literacy Innovator. After the war, Geisel finally returned to civilian life and children's literature. But a massive pivot happened in 1954. Life magazine had published a report claiming childhood illiteracy was skyrocketing, mostly because reading primers were just incredibly boring. So a publisher challenged Geisel to write a book that children simply couldn't put down, but he had to use a strictly constrained vocabulary list. 9 months later, he returned with The Cat in the Hat. He used exactly 236 words to write the whole thing. It was a monumental achievement, basically bringing that strict ad-man conciseness he learned in the 1930s full circle to revolutionize early reading. Section 5. Messages Behind the Magic. Subtitle, The Moral Messenger. So, the crucial point is, this brings us to the real culmination of his life experiences. The whimsical stories of his later career weren't just random nonsense. They were deeply informed by his gritty past. You can see these profound themes running through his most famous works. The Lorax champions environmentalism. The Sneetches strongly advocates for racial equality. And Yertle the Turtle pushes a clear anti-authoritarian message. His World War II anti-fascism and progressive cartooning didn't just fade away. They were directly forged into these sophisticated social themes, brilliantly disguised as bedtime stories. He was using his unique linguistic artistry as a tool for moral instruction. It's an incredible journey when you think about it. From a rule-breaking college student sneaking his pen name past the dean, to a corporate ad man, to an army propagandist, it all ultimately led to a 1984 Pulitzer Prize special citation. His contribution to the education and enjoyment of children around the world fundamentally changed global literacy forever. So, knowing what we know now, the complex, politically charged, and frankly fascinating history of Captain Geisel, how does it change the way you look at those simple, rhyming books sitting on the shelf? It really makes you read between the lines, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep asking those great questions.